And we are back. A little early today, actually. So I think I'm early for what I scheduled, which was 1 o'clock. But I think I'm gonna go back to 12:30. I forgot I had streamed on YouTube, and I had to fix that. So luckily I caught that before I started, or I would have been streaming in the wrong place than I thought I was actually streaming to. So, okay. I'm going to probably stick on Thursdays this year for at least the first part of 2024. Even though I kind of like Saturdays a little bit better, because I feel like I get a little more participation on Saturdays just because of the day of the week. But because I can't always make sure on Thursdays I'm going to have the time to do it and the space to do it, I kind of have to pull back on that. So I will stick with Thursdays for now. I might pop in here and there and do Saturday streams. I don't always update them on the calendar. Twitch is not the best on letting you schedule out like weekly. They kind of make you do like what it's going to be every week. They don't have a lot of flexibility on that. So we'll see. But just check back if you want to watch the streams. And I will be on, I don't promise, but once a week. I'll try once a week. Sometimes they won't make that, but I'll definitely have some content on here in 2024. How much? We'll see. We will see. I notice that every year since I started streaming, it's because other things have come in, it's gotten a little bit less. We'll see how many hours I actually get in this year as far as streaming hours go. So, okay. Today I want to frame up the difference between blind faith and divine faith. And I want to kind of break those out a little bit and see what we can make of them and what exactly the difference is. And can we see the difference in them? And which one is a more human ego tendency and which one is a more higher self soul tendency? Because a lot of times people kind of confuse the two and they kind of get hung up on divinity, the word divinity. And I know for a while I kind of got hung up on the word divinity, because the connotations around that word. And, if you have a lot of issues with religion, and I say have a lot of issues with religion because if you have a lot of issues with whether you're religious or not, so let's tackle it from this space first. If you're religious or not, a lot of people can have issues with religion, right? Either you don't really believe in anything beyond, the physical, or you just don't like structured religion, and then you get more into spirituality, which is not as much of a structured religion, like there is one God. Or you don't believe in anything. People can have an issue with different aspects we will embody. If you're raised really religious, it kind of can go against some of that. So different parts of our human consciousness can get hung up on different parts of the ascension process due to your relationship with religion. Whether you have one, whether you have a loose one, whether you have a tight one, whether you don't really have one. I found that sooner or later, when you get into angelic aspects, you get into, anchoring in your God, you're activating your God particle, anchoring in your Christ aspect, people, no matter what side of the fences they're on with it, it can be some resistance to those aspects. And the word divinity, I find, for me, I kind of had a little resistance to the word divinity. I felt like it always had to be really tied to religion, so I didn't really love the word. I don't use the word that much. And a lot of other channels that do this type of programming, this type of information sharing, they might use divinity more. And I found I have kind of shied away from the word divinity because of a connotation that my human would put to it, where it had to mean Jesus, or it had to mean, whatever it had to mean, whether, no matter where you fall on the, religious spectrum there. And it's all through it, how you feel about what does divinity really mean. And I'm not still going to go with the Webster's definition of what divinity means. But once I got to a point where divinity to me just meant a purity. It didn't have an agenda. It didn't have anything tied to what it wanted. It was coming from your most divine aspect. It was coming from your purest aspect. I could kind of drop any of the connotations I had around it. Now, our angelic aspect of ourselves, the Christ aspect of ourselves, to me, they're just divine aspects. They're pure aspects. They don't have the agenda, and they have a love for humanity, where your galactic aspects don't really have that. Anyone that's really in that galactic phase, They don't have a love for humanity. They love the galactic phase because it is a detaching phase. When you're into your galactic aspects, you're very detached from the human physical world. You know, you're not as into it. You don't care so much about it. You don't have a lot of attachment to people. You don't have a lot of attachment to different beliefs or systems. You just kind of almost operate outside the systems for a while. A lot of people call starseeds. They're the people who realize they're in the galactic aspects. Maybe they don't realize it immediately, but they'll start to resonate with that word, starseeds, and being into just the stars and not really anchoring in so much to the body that we have to do when we do the deep inner soul work. So to go through Ascension, you have to do both. The galactic aspects will give you detachment. It will give you galactic intelligence. It'll give you a lot of multidimensional enhancement. I usually don't use that word, but that's kind of a word I'm getting on that one. It will enhance how you believe, what you believe in, as far as when you get into the galactic core, when you get into the depths of, when you get really back into the color black again. A lot of us get away from the color black for a while, and we get more into colorful things. You know, I used to have, when I was in my human consciousness and my human realities, I had 3 colors. I had black, white, and gray. There's only 3 colors in my closet. And now I have maybe 1 or 2 black shirts, or I think I have 1 black dress, I have 1 black shirt, and everything else is colors. And I don't think I have anything gray, maybe a pair of pants that are gray. But we shift a lot, and we kind of get away from black because there can be a sadness. I don't know if it's sadness to that color. It kind of feels like a dampening. It doesn't feel like an activator. But when you get more into your galactic aspects, you'll get more into what people call the galactic core. Black will come back in, and there's a purity to that. There's a divinity to the black, and we kind of wear it in a different way. We wear it in a way that feels more divine for us, you know. So if you're kind of back into that color, or you left that color behind for a while, I think a lot of us leave those colors behind, then we kind of come back to them. And it's important for us to kind of understand that we will kind of go back and forth for a while. But there's always going to be these kind of crossroads we get to where we go away from it and we'll come back to it. So when you're in your galactic aspects and you are highly into galactic intelligence, and you might start dreaming about galactic war, you might start resonating more with a lot of the, you know, UFO, what do they call them now? It's not UFOs, UAP. That's the new word, UAP, unidentified flying phenomenon. I don't know. I think that's what, aerial phenomenon or something. If you're kind of getting into that stuff, you're activating your galactic aspects, and you're working on embodying those in at some point. You might be embodying them now, but you're activating the consciousness. We have to activate the consciousness before we can embody in the aspects. That's very important for us to do that. So as we go through a lot of our galactic embodiments, you start to kind of feel the difference between when you're in your soul aspects and your galactic aspects, because they are 2 kind of polarizing different things. So divinity can change. The word, the meaning of it can change as you go through each of these kind of, I say they're kind of polar opposites, but they're just 2 sides of the same coin. They're still part of the ascension coin. You're either going up or you're going in. You know, that's most people, to me, kind of go in first and then they go up. That's how I have done it. And then you get to some parts where you're kind of doing both at the same time. You do go through different iterations where you're kind of now I'm into both of them, right? I'm not into one over the other. Now I'm doing galactic aspects and I'm doing soul work at the same time. But galactic aspects, they are kind of a break from the soul aspects. So when we get back into, so if you get into the Archangel Michael, the warrior energy, the divine warrior energy, you're starting to get back more into your soul aspects, and the word divinity comes up in a lot of different iterations. Now, like I said, to me, I had to kind of separate it out for a while, and then I can kind of merge it back in. So if there is any words that you find come up for you when you're embodying in an aspect, because you can't embody in the aspect, live from that aspect, if you have any issues with it. And if you have any issues with religion, we have to work through those before we can complete certain parts of ascension. And when I say issues, whether you believe it or don't believe it, what part you believe in, what part you don't believe in, or if you feel like it is almost sacrilegious to believe that you are all these things. it's kind of the same thing, but in a different iteration when you talk about the galactic aspects and embodying in the solar sun, and you are the galactic core, and you are all these birthing all these galaxies. They're all within you. All the planets are within you. So anytime we go through any of these planetary retrogrades, it makes us embody in the energy of the planets. We can touch the consciousness of the planets, but unless we embody in the energy, we still will have friction and issues when any of these planets go retrograde, because we have not 100% embodied in those planets. Once we become those planets, embody in the energy of those planets, then we don't have the issue anymore. Like when we talk about Mercury retrograde, once we have developed clear, concise communication, Mercury retrograde won't bother you anymore. I promise you. It won't be a thing. You won't track it. You won't even know when it is. It doesn't matter. Because the whole point of Mercury retrograde is to get us to learn to communicate more clearly, which is not what our humans want to do. There's a reason. It also tries to get us off electronics, where all the electronics go wild for a while, and we fight against all that because we don't want that. We want to have all our electronics, and we want to have all that stuff there. You know, I watched this this TV show. What was it called? Murder at the End of the World. I think that's what it was called. And there was a part in there when the guy was saying back in the 20s and 30s or 40s, when people would smoke in movie theaters. Now we look back on that and you see the plume of smoke, you know, and you see old pictures of people smoking in theaters and how gross it is. And now we're just all kind of hunched over phones all the time, and no one's communicating with anybody, and everyone's trying to virtually communicate, and no one is really communicating anymore. And that's kind of gross. And that might look to be gross to a different generation. That's why we have to go back and look, going back to different collectives. I call them more collectives than I do different kind of generations. And judging what those collectives did, or why they did what they did, and the consciousness that they were at that time, is very counterproductive. Now, it does gives us a chance to clear our own inner judgment. But when we find we do that a lot, we're almost trying to take our eye off what we are judging. You know? We don't want to look at ourselves. Let's go back and judge what people did 300 years ago because that shit was messed up. Well, there's a reason why these collectives eventually shifted. Some people shifted enough out of that collective, and the rest of that collective just died out, and the collectives ceased to exist anymore. That's how you get the death of the collectives. It's one way or the other. Now we're able to shift them quicker, and you have more people just leaving certain collectives that they no longer want to support. And you do have the ones that are kind of fighting it from within. But that's not really the ascended, higher consciousness way you're going to go after a while. There's a time you're going to fight from within for a while, because it's part of standing up for yourself and saying, no, that's not okay. But to really get the collectives to fall, all of us just have to pull out of it. You can't really topple from within. Not when it comes to this stuff. We have to kind of pull out and go do something else. You know, we don't try to, it's kind of like trying to stay with someone to get them to be where you are in your consciousness journey. You can't force someone to do that. You can't force that change. You can go on and just live the life you want to live. And if that person wants to do that, they will eventually show up in your reality to share that. But if that's not what they want, you can't force that. You can't drag people uphill. You can't kind of... Force is like the only word I'm getting here. I hate it, kind of don't like to keep saying it, but it's the only really word I'm getting with it. When you keep trying to force that, you can't really, go to the next step, because you keep trying to force the same thing over and over and over and over again. So it's just to kind of be aware of that, and be aware of, what is our relationship to a lot of these words? What is our relationship to how we feel about certain collectives? Why do we feel the way we do about certain collectives? And what collectives do we follow? And that's going to kind of get more into the topic I did want to talk about, which is divine faith and blind faith. And what is the difference between having divine faith and blind faith? Blind faith is the human equivalent of divine faith. And when we're going on blind faith, we put our trust into people outside of us. And that is probably the best way I can explain blind faith. We're not looking inside for answers. We are looking outside for answers. We are following someone blindly. We're not asking questions. Not so much asking questions of them, but asking questions of ourselves. Even if we feel like it's not right, we're ignoring the signs. We're not really paying attention to every flag we have that says this shit is going to go off the rails. We keep going down it. We have this blind faith because we want something at the end of it. The only reason you're going to have blind faith is because you want something at the end of it. There's something you're seeking. If there's nothing you are seeking, we're not going to have this blind faith of following someone down a road we know does not feel right. And there's one thing I will say. We know when it's not right. Whether we have a dream about it not feeling right, whether we just kind of know inside this is going to go nowhere, whether we see 100 different reasons why this... It's that old, what is the old saying, opposites attract. And then there's someone that say all opposites attract is kind of trouble. And that's kind of more the side I come down on. When we're not in the same consciousness with someone we are following, that is not going to lead you anywhere you want to go. Now, that does not mean people of a different consciousness cannot come together to create something, because they can. I have seen it. I've been parts of that. We can come together with people with a different consciousness and live in a version of unity consciousness. Is it the highest of the high? No, because we're not going to be able to achieve that if everyone is not operating at that consciousness. Can we come together and create something beautiful? Can we come together and create something for humanity? Sure we can. If everyone's open-hearted and honest about what they want to create, we can do that. Is it something we're going to keep in our life for super long periods of time? Probably not. That's probably not how that's going to go for us, because of the difference in the consciousness. And those eventually, the bridges, it becomes too much to bridge the gaps. And when we talk about getting into different dimensions of consciousness, we talk about fourth dimension, we talk about fifth dimension, we get into sixth dimension, where we're restructuring our realities. And to me, things really start shaking out about seventh, eighth, and ninth dimension. When you start getting your body into those different dimensional frequencies, things start to fall apart, and they start to fall apart quicker because things become so misaligned. You can have someone that's coming into consciousness in the fourth dimension, beginning phases of the fourth dimension, and if you're in the eighth or ninth dimension, can you come together and make some things work for a while? Yes. Is it going to be a long-term thing? No, because everyone's not moving at the same pace, and it's not a race, but everyone's got their own human DNA markers. Human's probably not the higher consciousness markers is more the word I want to use here, but to clear their human DNA in a sense. Everyone's got their own journey, and we might be able to hang with it for a while, but eventually that's when stuff starts to fall off. And that's when we kind of, to me, start to shift. Even we might go from divine faith to blind faith in the same dimension. We can find ourselves flipping back and forth. Whereas if we want to talk about divine faith, that is more of an inner knowing. And I'm going to use divinity as just the purity of your knowing. The purity of knowing that you are on the right path. You're doing what you're supposed to do. It might make no fucking sense to anybody but you. And trust me, I've been in a lot of situations where I was the only one. Even me for a while, I was like, I don't know if this makes any sense. It makes no sense to anybody else but you keep going because you have this knowing. Inside. It's an inside out knowing that this is what you're supposed to do. And you might look at some signs, you might ask for signs outside to verify that. But internally, this is what I'm supposed to do. And you are following your inner guidance. You're not following someone else's outer guidance when it feels off. And you just ignore every other sign that says it's not going that way. And I'll get a lot of people to ask me, well, how do I know it's not going well? If there's continual roadblocks, we're not in the flow. We're not in our own flow. We're going with somebody else's flow. And when we start trying to go with somebody else's flow to get what somebody else wants, that's when we kind of start stepping out of our own divine faith in what we're doing, and we get into the blind faith of someone else. As humans, we will trust the shit out of everybody. If we are getting our ego stroked, we are getting we are happy with how someone is treating us. As far as making us feel important, we will continue to go down and trust anybody. No matter how weird it gets, we'll continue to go down the road. We won't abort the mission. We continue to go down the road. When you get more into divine faith, you'll find that it's your own inner guidance that's going to be guiding you. And once the road starts getting to where it doesn't feel like it's the right way anymore, we have to shift and change. Because vibrational realities, which is a lot different from human realities, higher consciousness realities are vibrational, which means they shift very quickly. What you feel like you might be doing tomorrow all of a sudden it shifts and you're not doing that anymore. But you don't try to bustle through it. The harder it is to plow through it, the chances are you're now just going on blind faith and you've lost that connection to divine faith. And that connection with yourself is what's going to put you back on the right path. And sometimes we will go with the blind faith because we want to get to a certain outcome and we feel like somebody else will get us there. We feel like if we go down this path, we're going to get to what we want. But we have to look at what are we trying to get to? What's the want? If you can identify what the want is, you're going to see how you're bypassing the signs. That's something, maybe I've switched. I thought I was on into my own divine, you can even take it from divine faith to just my own divinity, my own connection with myself, my own connection with source consciousness. I thought I was there, but now it's getting hard. Now that does not mean that your ascension path is going to be easy. It will not be easy, but not because it's not easy, because our human rejects the path. That's why it feels so rough. And we have so much to clear to stay on the path. We have so much to clear of in our human DNA, so much fear, so much sadness, so much grief, so much judgment. We have so much to clear out of our body that it feels like a very rough ride. And because none of our higher consciousness realities look like our human conscious realities did, or how we dreamed they would be, we get kind of discombobulated that we've kind of stepped off the path and we're not doing the way we are supposed to be doing because we don't feel like we're achieving a human success that we would have looked at. We're in our human consciousness, we would judge it as, oh yeah, that's successful, right? We're not seeing that. We're not saying, oh yeah, that looks great. That reality is just how I thought it would be. If your realities are not how you thought they would look like in your ascension process, in your higher consciousness realities, in your soul line of realities, if they look totally opposite, you're on the right track. If no one in there you thought would be there is there, if you have entirely new people there, if everything you thought you were going to bring with you is not there, that's when you're kind of on the right path with your soul line realities. Because no matter how strange they look to you, and no matter how alien they look to you, you still have a sense of peace and joy and happiness in the reality. And there's a sense of calmness because you do know you're in the right place. You know you're where you're supposed to be. And anyone who has ever had that feeling they're not where they're supposed to be, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they've had the dream where they're not prepared for the test, or they're late to go somewhere, they're late to get to class. Those are, to me, all the telltale signs of, we're kind of going more on blind faith. We're not hitting our markers the way we're supposed to be hitting them. And we're not exiting the realities we're supposed to exit. And the minute we start getting into that, the minute we start getting into not exiting those realities we're supposed to exit out of, we keep going down the same road, whether we're going down the same road with the same people, or we just don't clear the energy, we don't give the realities time to reset, and we end up just starting the whole thing all over again repeatedly because we don't energetically clear anything. It's just now we're going to tee it up with new people and we're going to just run this back all over again. We're just going to do the same shit all over again and wonder, why does it keep getting to the same spot? At what point do I realize that it's me and it's not all these other people that are in these realities, because I'm calling them all forth to keep playing out the same thing. And we do it over and over and over again because we keep following somebody else. Your human consciousness will always devalue what you know. It's going to do one thing or the other. It's either going to inflate what you know or devalue what you know, or you're going to follow somebody else because you think they know more than you do. Now, there is a part of ascension where you are going to put your trust into people who, at that point, will be able to see more than you can see. They might know more in that moment than you know, because you just haven't unlocked the consciousness yet. It's not that you can't, you haven't done that part yet. Once you unlock that consciousness, then you move on to the next consciousness you're going to unlock, the next milestone for you in your process. It's not that you can't do it, it's just that you haven't done it yet. It hasn't been your time to do it yet, or we're kind of meandering around doing it because the minute you start opening up those boxes and opening up all those things that we know we're supposed to do, we have to leave stuff behind to do that. We have to shift. And every year in my process, I'll be something else I'm going to focus on. And everything else I focused on, kind of, I'll be doing it. I'm fitting it into my reality, but it's just you bringing on another thing because you've mastered maybe these 7 things. Now we're going to bring on the 8th thing. We're going to bring on something new you're going to do. It's part of kind of parceling yourself out. It's living that multidimensional reality where we just don't have one job. We have 12 jobs. You know, it's not just that I go to work and come home and I do one thing all day. Everything you're doing is part of a bigger puzzle. And whether you can see every part of the puzzle or you can't see every part of the puzzle, it doesn't so much matter in the beginning because we're not going to see it till we're kind of pulling out of that consciousness and where we can see it from a even higher consciousness, because you can only align your realities and really view them top down. You can't look up and understand a higher reality. You can't look up and understand why you have to go into that reality. You will only see it once you're above it, and you can look back down on it and understand because you can see the bigger picture of why you had to go through that and why you had to move on to that phase and why you couldn't stay where you were. I see so many people that get stuck, and I did the same thing. So when I say it, I'm not judging the people who are in it because I did the same thing. We get stuck in when the big shifts start to happen. We don't want to let those go. We don't want to let go of certain things, and what that thing is going to be different for everybody. But there's certain things we don't want to let go of, and when we start to get to those things, we will hold on to them with the tightest grip until our hands are just blue, you know, trying to hold on to them because there are certain things we identified with so much that we don't want to let them go. We're just not ready to face what happens next, you know. And when we get more into, and you will find the more you connect within and the more you go on divine faith and trust what your inner guidance is telling you to do, that doesn't mean you won't have to. Sometimes our inner guidance is going to force us to do something to clear a bigger program. And when we're in it, we feel like we've made a wrong turn. It's not we've made a wrong turn. We're now deeper into a program we're trying to clear. So now this reality has set up to do that. And once we view it as that, but I will tell you, you won't see it as that till you've just about cleared the program. Then you'll understand why you're there and why you have to clear it. You won't see it in that moment. Usually by the time you can see it, it means you're almost finished. I'm almost done. And now it's almost like our universe gives us a chance. It gives us that second wind to kind of get to the next phase by letting us see how far we've come and why we had to do all that. You know, people will call it walking through portals, you know, where you get the first activation and then you might have 2 to 3 years at a minimum before you get to the other side of it because you had all that stuff in the way to get you to where your body arrives in that reality. You've got to clear so much to get there, and that is not a process that happens overnight. So we can flip a lot and think we're really in divine faith, and we really switch over to something else. We're more into that blind faith of ignoring everything because we expect it to go a certain way, or we want it to go a certain path, and we don't like it when that path deviates. We can't really understand why. Because we have this misconception that our soul aligned realities are the most awesome realities we're ever going to have, which is true. The misconception is we don't have to clear anything to get there. Because if our human body could sit in those realities now, it would be sitting there. There's work to get there because we have to clear things. We have to clear our emotional body. We have to clear, you know, our DNA. We have to clear so much from our body. Our belief system has to totally be reworked. We have to let go of everything we thought we believed in our human consciousness. What we've been trained to believe over years and years and years and years, and it's been embedded in many iterations of being in a human body. It's not easy to clear that stuff. It takes time, and people want to believe they can do it really fast. You can't do it. It'd be too much. You know, your body couldn't handle it. There's a reason why there's so many parts and pieces to the process. It's the gift, really, of ascension. It's not the cruelty of ascension. You know, when you start to see everything start to fall apart, and we get to the next phase and the next phase, and we keep doubling down on ascension because we don't know what else to do. You know, we keep rolling the dice and keep going forward because at some point we have to arrive where we're trying to get to. But that is an inner peace inside. It's not going to be in the beginning something you're going to see outside. It's just not, because we have to learn to detach from that. And if we keep expecting our outside to look a certain way to bring us that happiness and activate that happiness within us, then we kind of start to miss the point of what we're trying to do. It doesn't mean that we can't use things to activate happiness, and Daras will do that. Lots of different things we'll utilize outside of us to make us, to activate that consciousness, because if we don't activate it, we can't embody it. We have to activate the consciousness first, and then we have to embody the consciousness, which is to become it. And there's different things you're going to find as far as, you know, how that process is going to work. We can utilize all this stuff to activate it, but if we become dependent on it, we have to get to the point where it's okay if it's there, if it's not there. You know, even the same thing with partners, you know, we can't depend on them to be there to activate our happiness. It's either they're there, that's fine, but whether you're there or not, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to have that same peace and happiness inside of me. That's the true gift of what ascension is. And it doesn't mean that all those other things won't follow to support you, because if you need something to support you, it will show up. We have just been so conditioned as humans to want so many things and expect to have all these things, or we can't be happy. You know, we're very much over consumers, and our human consciousness has been made to overconsume it to a very destructive place, where we don't care really about any other humans as long as we have what we need, and we don't even have what we need. We keep wanting to strive for what we want, not what we really need. Ascension will take you back for years, really. Years to clear the wanting and what do you really need. And let's go back to what do you really need, and what does this person over here really need? If person A needs more in their ascension year to make it than you're going to need, because you have a different situation. Maybe you have someone else supporting you that year. Maybe you're still in a job that's going to support you for another year or so. Well, you don't need as much as this person over here is going to need. That it doesn't have that right now. They're in a different part of their process. Because look at how much money gets allocated toward ascension. Look how much money gets allocated toward people in their ascension process. You know, it's not really being supported by humanity in that sense. Humanity, on a whole, is still supporting human consciousness. You know, so we have to start separating it out. And ascension will get you to the different parts of ascension, get you to separate that out. What is it that I really need? And what is it that I just want and feel like I need? And those are two completely different ends of the spectrum. And eventually we arrive back in the middle again. But that's one thing that keeps us kind of going down a very following things to get what we want. But it's really not what we have to have. It's just we want all these things. And then we have to start to decode, why do we want all these things? You know, there's always an external reason we want all these things. It's not an internal reason. Because internally, you're always going to be tapping into your source consciousness, you know, the heartbeat of Mother Earth. Some people will even call it that. There's a lot of abundance there, but there's no waste there, and there's no overconsumption there. You know, everyone has exactly what they need when they need it, and you will find that in your ascension process. But it takes us a while to understand that we want more, and that's what can create that disconnect for a lot of our realities in those 6th, 7th, 8th, even 9th dimension. You'll still kind of feel like creeping in because you're still clearing more of that program on, okay, but I want that, but I don't really need any of that stuff. And none of that stuff, having it, is not going to affect how I feel inside anymore. You know, it just doesn't affect that. But I still can be in that overconsumer phase. So once we can kind of start to see that's just a program, that's all it is. We're just conditioned to want more and more and more and more, and not really care who has less. We can say we care, but we don't really care. If we really cared, we would try to balance that out. But if we don't really care as humans, and that's just kind of the fact we have to get to on that. In our human consciousness, we did not care. Not enough. So, okay, I'm going to check my chat really quick and see if I have anything. And I think that's where... okay, I don't really have anything I need to worry about today. Okay, so I think that is it for me, and I will see you next Thursday.